20 children boarded a school bus this morning and never came home. This is not a statistic. These are sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, futures that were extinguished on a road in Uganda. And what happened here carries a warning that every single African nation needs to hear right now. Here is what we know. A school bus carrying pupils and staff in Uganda was involved in a catastrophic crash that has claimed the lives of at least 20 children. Dozens more students and school staff were rushed to hospital with injuries ranging from moderate to critical. Early investigations point to a mechanical fault as the suspected cause. A mechanical fault. Not a natural disaster. Not an act of God. A preventable mechanical failure that stole 20 young lives. In this video, we are going to break down exactly what happened, why it happened, what the Ugandan government must now answer for, and critically what this moment means for every African country still gambling with the lives of its children through failing infrastructure, underfunded transport safety systems, and regulatory negligence. Because this is not just a Ugandan story. This is an African story. Let us start with context. Uganda has one of the youngest populations on the African continent. More than 77% of Uganda's population is under the age of 30. That means Uganda's schools are packed. Demand for school transport is enormous and the infrastructure supporting that transport has struggled to keep pace with population growth and economic pressure. School bus safety in Uganda, like in many sub-Saharan African nations, sits inside a broader crisis of road traffic safety. According to the World Health Organization, Sub-Saharan Africa bears the highest road traffic fatality rate in the world, approximately 26.6 deaths per 100,000 people. To put that in perspective, that is more than double the rate in Europe. Uganda specifically recorded over 3,500 road traffic deaths in a single recent year, according to the Uganda Police Force Annual Crime and Traffic Report. And those are only the reported deaths. Now, when we talk about school transport specifically, the risks compound. Many school buses operating in Uganda and across East Africa are aging vehicles, some over 20 years old, imported second-hand from Asia and Europe. Maintenance standards vary widely. Government inspection regimes are under-resourced. And in rural and semi-rural corridors, roads themselves can be deeply dangerous, unpaved, poorly marked, and unlit. This crash did not happen in a vacuum. It happened in a system. A system that has been flashing warning signs for years. Now let us move to the current situation, because right now, as families grieve, there are urgent questions being asked at every level of Ugandan society. The crash is reported to have been caused by a suspected mechanical fault. That single phrase, mechanical fault, should trigger an immediate, nationwide audit of every school transport vehicle operating in Uganda today. Every single one. Because if one bus failed, we have to ask, how many others are one bad brake, one tire, one failed steering column away from the same tragedy? The Ugandan Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Works and Transport now face enormous pressure. Parents across the country are asking whether their children are safe. School administrators are asking whether the buses they contracted meet legal roadworthiness standards. And the public is asking why in 2024 Uganda does not have a mandatory, rigorous, independently verified school vehicle safety certification system. These are not radical demands. These are basic standards of governance. Standards that protect children. The Uganda National Roads Authority, the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the Uganda Police Traffic Directorate all have jurisdiction over aspects of this issue. The question is whether those agencies have been sufficiently resourced and empowered to enforce the standards that, on paper, already exist. Like. This video help more Africans see this story. The algorithm buries stories like this. Your like is what makes it visible. Now let us talk about the key stakeholders in this tragedy, because understanding who is responsible shapes what accountability looks like. First, the school. The institution that contracted or operated this bus carries a duty of care to every child placed in its transport system. Were proper vehicle checks conducted? Was the bus roadworthy? Who authorized its operation? Second, the government. Uganda's transport regulations require vehicles used for public passenger transport, including school transport, to pass roadworthiness inspections. If this bus was operating with a known mechanical fault, the inspection system failed. If inspections were never conducted, the regulatory system failed. Either way, the state bears responsibility. Third, the community. Parents, school boards, and local governments all play a role in flagging unsafe transport. In many cases, communities see the warning signs of overcrowded buses, visibly deteriorating vehicles but lack the formal channels or political power to demand action before tragedy strikes. Fourth, international partners and development organizations. Agencies like the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and bilateral donors have invested billions in Uganda's transport infrastructure. The question of whether road safety has been a genuine priority within those investments or a footnote deserves honest examination. And finally, the victims' families. They are not just grieving. They are owed answers, accountability, and a commitment that this will never happen again. Subscribe for honest, Pan-African analysis you will not find on CNN or BBC. We cover the stories that matter to Africa without the Western filter. Now here is where we pull the lens back. Because this tragedy in Uganda is a mirror held up to the entire African continent. Africa is the youngest continent on Earth. The median age across Africa is approximately 19 years old. 19. That means Africa's greatest asset, its extraordinary, unmatched human capital, is concentrated in children and young people who are, right now, being educated in systems that in many cases cannot guarantee their physical safety to and from school. This is a Pan-African infrastructure crisis. It is not isolated to Uganda. In Ghana, school transport safety has been a recurring public concern. In Nigeria, school buses operating in Lagos and Abuja have been flagged by safety advocates for years. In Kenya, matatu culture, while culturally celebrated, has contributed to devastating road accidents involving school children. In South Africa, learner transport is a documented crisis, with hundreds of incidents reported annually. But here is the other side of this story, and this is where Africa's rising generation comes in. Because across this continent, there are African engineers, African transport planners, African policy advocates, and African civil society leaders who are building solutions. Uganda itself has a growing tech and innovation sector. African-designed vehicle tracking systems, African road safety NGOs, African youth-led advocacy campaigns, these exist. They are underfunded. They are under-celebrated. But they exist. The response to this crash must not simply be grief. It must be the trigger for structural change. And that change can be led by Africans. So what does this mean for Africa's future, and what must happen now? First, Uganda must immediately initiate a national audit of all school transport vehicles. No bus should be carrying a child until it has been independently certified as roadworthy. This is not optional. This is urgent. Second, African governments collectively need to elevate road safety as a national security issue, because that is exactly what it is. When children are dying on roads at these rates, when school buses are failing, the security of a nation's future is under threat. Third, the African Union's Road Safety Action Plan, which exists and which calls for a 50% reduction in road traffic deaths, must be resourced and enforced with the same seriousness that African governments bring to other continental agendas. Words on paper do not save children. Funded implementation does. Fourth, African media, including channels like this one, must keep the pressure on. Not just for one news cycle. Not just while the grief is fresh. But consistently, systematically, until governments act. 20 children are gone. And the only acceptable response, the only response that honors their lives, is relentless, sustained action. Comment below, what do you think African governments must do right now to protect children on school transport? Drop your country and your thoughts, because this conversation needs to happen across the entire continent, not just in Uganda. Check out this next video. We go deep on why Africa's infrastructure gap is the most important story the Western media refuses to cover, and which African nations are leading the charge to change it. Uganda is grieving today. But Africa's future is being built by people who refuse to accept that this is how things have to be. Stay in this conversation. Subscribe. Like. Share this with someone who needs to see it. The children of Africa deserve better, and together, we are going to demand it.